Welcome into this week's episode of the High School OT Press Box. Evan Moesta, joined by High School OT contributor J. Mike Blake. We are officially 1 week into the month of September. September 7th is the date of recording here. We just wrapped up week number 3 of the high school football season and the 4th week of the fall sports season. J. Mike, we're going to get right into it. If you follow along with High School OT's football coverage on Friday nights, our Talk It Out NC scoreboard, it is the most up-to-date statewide scoreboard that you're going to find. The reason we say that is if you go on Max Preps, let's say like 7:45 on a Friday night, you're going to find multiple scores on Max Preps where it says first quarter, one team 78 and the other team 76. And it's because Max Preps has that ability where you can sit at a game and just plug it in, and there is no vetting whether that is official information or not. And so if you follow like a Max Prep scoreboard, which is, one of the only other statewide ones out there, it's not as accurate. So we do, I would say we do a pretty good job at High School OT of sitting around manually in our offices on Friday, scouring every possible avenue to find scores that are up to the minute. And one of those scores that Joel Bryant and I saw go final on Friday night stopped us in our tracks, made us think, is this a Max Prep score? And then we found out it was real. And it was not only the most points scored in a game this season, but it was obviously the widest margin of victory in a game this season, and probably in quite some time in the state of North Carolina. And I'm talking about the Shelby Highland Tech game on Friday night, in which Shelby won 90-0.
Oof.
There are a lot of layers to this that when you look at the score, you can react several different ways. I'm going to start, though, because Joel Bryant's initial thought was around conference realignment, and he's right. But I'm going to go a different direction here. I kind of feel bad for both teams, and I feel bad for Shelby. And you're saying, how do you feel bad for a team that won 90-0? How disrespectful. They ran up the score. It was 74-0 at halftime. Obviously the NCHSAA, they shrunk the threshold for a running clock. That didn't matter because you can score as much as you want in the first half. They scored 16 in the second. But I feel bad for Shelby because if you're a high school football senior, first off, if I was to name the top 15 football programs historically in the state of North Carolina, Shelby's on the list. Maybe even top 10, arguably top 5. We're talking about Shelby football here.
Yeah.
But if you're a senior, you're promised 10 games in your high school career, your senior season. The first 2 Shelby lost. They entered Friday night 0-2. Granted, they were big county losses to Kings Mountain. They had a close one with Crest, their rival. But they came in 0-2. So do you think they're going to waste away a game that they have for their seniors? Are they going to waste a game away that they have for their starters when they have much higher aspirations and goals? Do we want Shelby to take a knee in the second quarter? Do we want them to intentionally fall down? Do we want them to play their backups the entire game? Do we want them to purposely fail when they're an 0-2 team so they can punt the ball away to the other team? There's a lot of things there that I don't think you can just point your fingers and say, man, that was disrespectful on Shelby's regard. Now, 90-0, again, we weren't there. I didn't see the game. Could they have probably trimmed a couple of points? Probably. But have I also been at high school football games where I can very clearly see one team just can't stop the other? There's a certain level of integrity in the game, too. Like, if a kid's not going to tackle you and you're running straight, at some point, like, either you're going to fall down on your own or you're going to score a touchdown. If the other team's fumbling the ball or throwing it right to you, are you going to purposely not catch an interception?
Right.
There's stuff like that. And then on the Highland Tech side, those kids don't deserve that either. The coaches don't deserve that. The kids don't deserve that. Highland Tech, who was a 1A school up until this, has been 1A, They don't. They. If you were to ask Highland Tech to put together a schedule, they're not putting Shelby on that, and Shelby's not putting Highland Tech on that. And that's not out of disrespect for the other. It's not safe. It's not fun. I'm sure there are moments where Shelby had some fun on Friday night, but at one point it gets exhausting and it's not fun. And part of that is realignment. And you can add to this, J. Mike. Highland Tech was one of those teams that when the conferences came out, Highland Tech was not the most enthused to be in this league where they have to, in football, just football, they got to play Burns and Shelby. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's your take? Because, I mean, that was Joel Bryant's initial thing was like, this game doesn't get played if the conference realignment wasn't the way it was for that league.
Yeah. Well, part of this is to understand Highland Tech is a magnet school in Gaston County. It's the name of a historically black school, but it's a different purpose now where it's a magnet school. And they are a reason why I say, guys, if you want to lump magnet schools in with parochials and charters, they're not winning a whole lot. Most people don't even know Highland Tech exists unless you're in that Gaston County area. But certainly what they are good at would be some of those country club sports. It wouldn't necessarily be football.
They have a great volleyball.
Yeah.
They're incredible at volleyball.
Yeah. And honestly, whether it's tennis, they'll have some good individuals, or cross country. But look at Highland Tech is also in that same conference this year as Bessemer City, which is actually barely a 3A school, but that's another very small school that's in Gaston County, and Cherryville, another super small school, Gaston County. So that's 3 small schools in Gaston County right there on the South Carolina border. They don't really have a whole lot of teams they can pair up with. And so they got with a 4A, 3A, 2A crowd, West Lincoln, Burns, Shelby. And there's a big difference in the haves and have-nots when it comes to certain sports like football. If we did football only conferences, which I've been told is actually against the bylaws of the association, you would have to get a whole amendment passed by all the schools to do that again. Well, it wouldn't take as many schools now to vote as it has in the past. But you would have to use that. You couldn't just do your own, as long as pretty much everyone in the state has a team. You can't do it like you did with lacrosse at one point and go conference 1, conference 2. The other thing is they're kind of stuck because I know Cherryville and Bessemer City aren't necessarily saying, hey, let's join a conference with all the charter schools, because they know they're not that. And Highland Tech might say, well, even we're not that. We're a public school. We're part of Gaston County schools. Why are we going with these teams? Even though they might be good, better fits in some sports, they wouldn't be in other cases. Sometimes what I found in the past is that charter schools and traditional public schools, when they don't mix, is because the traditional public school has more JV teams. The charter schools typically only have a varsity. And so scheduling becomes really difficult, even if the public school is competing, like Chatham Central was once when they were in a conference with a bunch of charters. And so it is kind of an unfortunate set of circumstances, but you're right, Evan. Neither team got better. Neither team got better from a game. It was 90-0. Shelby didn't fine tune anything. And no, I'm not dropping the ball if it gets thrown to me, especially if I see wide open grass in front of me. If I'm not going to run into a tackle, that goes against every nature of competition. Hey, you tackle me at the 5. No, it's a game. I'm going to go for the end zone. This actually reminds me of a game. It was back in 2017. So my last year at the News and Observer, Tarboro was playing Jones. They were in the same conference. And this is right before Jones starts shutting down his football program and trying to relaunch as 8-man and then now 11-man. Tarboro won 61-0. They ran 17 plays. They got credited with 10 first downs and on those 17 plays, and the other 7 plays were touchdowns. So they ran 17 plays, and actually, no, sorry, they had 8 touchdowns on 17 plays, and a different person scored a touchdown every single time. And they also scored 1 defensive touchdown. 61-0 from just handing off to this guy. He runs, no one tackles him, touchdown. Okay, I guess next time it's your turn. Tarboro did not get better that night, neither did Jones. And it shows the kind of complexities that happen in these conference realignments, because some people say, hey, for football gates, get me in that league. And others, like Highland Tech was one of those saying, please, no, don't put us in this league. This is why this game on Horizon was one of the major reasons why Bessemer City, Highland Tech, and Cherryville were like, I'm not so sure about this league for us, because you're not just with bigger schools. In the case of Shelby, you're with a powerhouse in your backyard. And it's tough. And I think from my perspective, everyone's got their own code, right? It would be nice if we had a shared code that we all understood across the state. And I think the shared code should be, I got to let my guys play for at least a quarter or a half as hard as they can. Like in basketball, if I'm a pressing team, I'm going to press you for the first quarter. If I'm up 20, I might press you again in the second quarter. And if I'm up 40, then I need to probably let off the gas, even though it's the second quarter. But I think
like lacrosse getting up near 20 goals.
Like I owe it to the guys who practice hard every day that they're going to go out there and play real football or real basketball, real lacrosse, and not this, hey, like, can you it's 5-0, guys. We got it in the bag. Like, let's ease up. Or in case of football, it's 21-0. Maybe we should, maybe we should not try to take this next play all the way. I think, well, if we have that common established like protocol, then we look at 74-0 and say, okay, maybe they did all they could, and that's actually how much of a disparity there was between these two teams. We don't know. We'll find out more details in the coming days, but I can totally see a world where you just run off tackle, halfback off tackle, and you score every single time you run it because you're that much better and that much faster. And you put in the third string and he does the same thing, because Shelby's JV guys or 8-quarter guys, they're just as good. They're just better than whoever the other team has on their sideline. They're faster. They're going to get to the corner and go down the sideline and score. And so I think for all sports, especially now that we have a smaller like running clock, 35 points instead of 42. I think, you just have to look at a score like that and say, let's hold off on criticizing the team that won by that much. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not necessarily ascribed to the belief of like, it's their job to stop you. Well, to a certain point, right? So they scored 2 times in the second half, at least with 16 points. I'm not sure the point breakdown. There could have been some safeties involved, right? But I think, there's got to be a kind of an established standard across the state of like, hey guys, like if you're in one of these games, what do you do? What do you do, coach? What do you do, coach? And then we kind of figure out like, okay, if this score looks crazy, but we kind of know what happened. Just like in lacrosse, there is an established thing, which is you stop at 19. That's like a rule in lacrosse. So everyone knows that if you see 19 goals to 5 or to 3 or to 2, that the team that won, no matter how much more they could have gotten, they all agree we're going to stop at 19. I don't know what you would do in football because that's a little bit different. You can't just tell the 4th string.
Like an honor code.
Yeah. Like, what is the honor code, I guess, for football? And I think, playing really hard for a quarter or a half, if that leads you to 7-4-0, as a coach, you might say, what else could I do? Like everybody off my bench is going to score in a contest like this, just like with Tarboro and Jones. I mean, Tarboro, Coach Craddock, he's not – there's been several times where he could have won 90 or 100 on –
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, no doubt.
He wasn't. Because I'm sure he's got his code, right? And that was probably the hardest code that he's ever had to uphold against Jones, where they only had 17 offensive plays. And Jones, by the way, had negative 67 yards of offense, negative 67. So
carry on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say 2 things based off of what you said. First off, I will note Highland Tech boys soccer, and Highland Tech volleyball. Both of them are 7-1 this season, and unbeaten in conference play. So good on the Rams there.
Yeah.
But again, the football team has to play Lincolnton and Burns and Cherryville and West Lincoln. Like it just, it's not going to be smooth sledding there. My second thought, though, about a year ago, a little under a year ago, there was the conversation of like, maybe one of the ways that our state counteracts charters and parochials, for instance, and magnets, is to just all lump them in with the biggest schools. And the
Remember
charters
that.
and parochials just mashed down on the alarm and sounded it and said, no, 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 that's not safe and that's not equitable. And some people laughed in their face and said, haha, deal with it. You don't play by the same rules as us. And as you added, is Highland Tech a charter? No. Are they a magnet? Do they have principles in their, I don't mean principles as in the administration, but like, do they have, core values in their school that exceed athletics with what they do technologically and all of that? Yeah. That's your example right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That wasn't a safe game to play. And so you can't be like, man, I don't want to see a football game 90-0, but I want to punish those smaller schools that I think sound like a charter and I don't know about them. I mean, Highland Tech volleyball and soccer, for instance, they're beating teams in higher classifications. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's people balling up their fist mad at a cloud over it, that they lost to a school that was a 1A called Highland Tech.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
Highland Tech,
you can't be mad at both.
Soccer knocked off our preseason top 25
South Point.
Prep. Yeah. So
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. They beat a ranked charter school, Bradford Prep.
They lost to South Point by 4-3. That's their only loss of the year. And then the volleyball team, their only loss is to Kings Mountain, who's top 10 in our poll.
Yeah. I think it shows just the complexity to this. It's not as simple as, because I think it was Pine Lake Prep that really pushed back. I was like, if you're trying to put us in the conference with Huff, like that's not going to be good for us. And we're building, and Pine Lake Prep was like built a little, a competitive program. And they're not trying to, beat the heck out of everybody, like just be a dominator and trying to get things turned their way so they can dominate. But they also know that for any kid, it's a situation like that is not going to be fair. It's not going to be safe. And I think it's something that maybe I think in football, it's just a different animal, and maybe you can do football only conferences. We'll see what the brackets come out, how people like those, and what all these split conferences do to football brackets versus these other brackets. Because I know from last year, RPI worked really well in all these sports except for football. Football, you had some head scratchers in the like who got some of the top seeds amongst conference champs and who has some of the top wild card seeds. And this year, we've done away with the placeholders for conference champs or placeholders for split conference champs. But if football is still a little weird, because again, Shelby, if Highland Tech loses and keeps losing to other schools, which I'm sure they're going to lose a few more times this year, Shelby's RPI
that win means nothing. Yeah, that win means nothing for Shelby.
Yeah, it wins nothing. And did they get better on Friday? No. Did Highland Tech get better? No. So, yeah, tough situation for everyone. I think maybe at some point the football coaches could push for that, because I know there is some popularity. Football is like, hey, if we just did our conferences, maybe it's a different way of qualifying, where if we're doing everything by ADM in classification, maybe we could do our own thing, because split conferences actually don't seem to hurt as much in these other sports as they do football.
So moving from football, we're going to talk, we talked a little bit about boys soccer, talked a little bit about volleyball and Highland Tech's success there. Let's go to some unexpected state championship contenders that we have found through the first month of the season across all fall sports. That includes girls golf, girls tennis, boys cross country. Specifically in golf and tennis, though, Jim, Mike, a couple of the state's newest teams, Ballantyne Ridge and Felton Grove, who is one of the state's newest teams for sure, they're finding instant success in some sports. And you think they got a chance to make some noise this playoff time?
I would. Right now, it's only been a few weeks, and girls golf is a sport that doesn't play every single day or every single week. It just kind of matters on course availability. But their scores at Felton Grove already, and the fact that they are 6A, they could be a top 3 team in the state in 6A.
Wow.
It'd be very hard to overcome Charlotte Catholic, who we were really high on in preseason. And I think Charlotte Catholics had one match, and they did really, really well. But Felton Grove in their new conference, the Triangle Six, where they have Holly Springs, Cary, Middle Creek, Cardinal Gibbons, Sanderson, they won that one going away. So not only could they be the first conference champion in school history, but they could easily bring back some hardware if they are like the 6A runner up and let's say Charlotte Catholic wins. That's still incredible for a first year school with only freshmen and sophomores. And again, they were not ranked obviously in our preseason. They just started, so we had no idea who they had. On the girls tennis side, that's where Ballantyne Ridge, which is in its second year, so no seniors, just juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. They've already picked up some big non-conference wins. And tennis is one of those sports where you can do a little bit of transitive property, right? Not all the way, not in those 5-4 matches or there's a lot of tiebreakers. But if you beat this team 9-0 and that team beat somebody else and it was close, you can kind of assume you would do the same thing to Team C as you did to Team B. Well, Ballantyne Ridge, the transitive property is looking good. And that's tough to believe because 7A West has your Marvin Ridge and Weddington, Cuthbertson. But Ballantyne Ridge is actually like already on par with those schools. They haven't played Marvin Ridge directly, but that's one where you see the transitive property and you're like, oh my gosh, what if Ballantyne Ridge is a 7A West champ or 7A champ altogether? Because there's a few sports where I would say most sports, 7A is better than 8A, but that's not true in tennis. And that's not true in like swimming and a few other things. The tennis is really interesting because like 8A is just killer in the East and West, but Ballantyne Ridge could find themselves bringing home some hardware for the first time. I've like I told Evan, I think I told you and Joel, I was like, this is the year like Ballantyne Ridge starts to put their foot down in some sports, maybe not all sports. Yep. But some sports, they start to kind of say, hey,
we've had some good results, especially in soccer. They've had some good early results.
Lacrosse, things like that. Like I can totally see them being ranked in top 25 in our rankings in a number of things this year.
Now let's take a look at cross country. There are a couple teams, both boys and girls, that as you started to look around are putting up some impressive times, and they could definitely make some noise this year.
Yeah, these are all schools that we did not have ranked in the preseason top 25. So I want to make sure that like it wasn't like, hey, this team was ranked 24th, but now we think they might be 15th. Like these are teams that were not really on our radar. In the boys cross country, Charlotte Catholic has, and you're like, oh yeah, of course, it's a parochial school. Okay, but Charlotte Catholic has not been a factor in cross country in years. I can't actually remember a time where Charlotte Catholic was like, I mean, they're great in a lot of sports, not really cross country, but now they could boys cross country in 6A. They're kind of the favorite at this point of the season. South Rowan in 4A, excuse me. I can't remember sometimes which one's which, but South Rowan in 4A, they are actually looking really good. And this is a school who has won state championship in school history in all sports. That was a few years ago in baseball. And now boys cross country, it looks like they could be a really be a 5A contender or 4A contender. And then the other one is a team that you've probably heard of, and program-wise, they are tradition rich, but they've had a rough go in the last 4 years of realignment, and that's Carborough girls cross country. When you look at the 4A field, Carborough is right there sitting pretty as one of the top 2 or 3 teams. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the 4A title this year, which would kind of harken back to the powerhouse days they had when they were in the old 2A. When they moved up to 3A, it was a little bit stiffer competition, and I think it just coincided with the program going through some rebuilding years. So it was kind of a worst of both worlds. But I think those are 3 names to know, teams that we did not have ranked, and really we're not even considering for the top 25, who might make us have to do that at the end of the season. Charlotte Catholic, South Rowan boys, and Carborough girls cross country.
I want to talk about a couple of volleyball teams who are going to potentially, finish this year really strong. But actually, I'm only going to highlight 2 conferences in the state. I'm going to highlight 2 conferences that are in exact opposites of each other. Starting in the far northeast of the state, the Albemarle Athletic Conference, which has Bertie, Camden County, Gates County, Holmes, Manio, Perquimans. That league in volleyball is unbelievable. And they're all about to play each other this week. Camden County, J. Mike, unbeaten. Gates County, unbeaten. Holmes, unbeaten. Perquimans, who played for the 1A state title last year, unbeaten.
Wow.
They're all undefeated, J. Mike. Something has to give this week because they all play each other.
That's
That's unbelievable.
yeah.
And we're gonna have a state title. Somebody in that league is gonna play for a state championship.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what point we figure out what team that's going to be, because they're all gonna have to. You could play the conference tournament and just call that a bracket for playoffs. Whoever makes it out of that league, we talk about in like 8A, like it's gonna be Green Hope or Green Level. Whoever wins that, yeah, it could be one of those like 3, 4, 5 teams. I think that's incredible. I'm going to try to make my way up there Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe. I think Gates County plays Perquimans, and then Camden's at Holmes. So they're right next, Holmes and Perquimans are, about 15 minutes away from each other. So I'm going to try to catch both of them.
Yeah.
That leaves Manio out of the picture and get up there and see Manio at one point, because Manio made a really deep run into the playoffs last year. They played Seaforth in the regional final.
That's crazy. And then Camden County has
Camden County's always there. Yeah.
That's a loaded conference.
It's unbelievable. So that's one where I'm like, okay, there's surprising teams across the board, but there's a state finalist in there somewhere, and it's one of them, and we could spin a wheel and have no clue who it is. The other one I'm going with is the Mountain 8 Conference out west. You have Brevard, who 2 years ago won a state title. You have West Henderson, who last year won a state title. You have Pisgah, who has had some really strong results throughout this season. North Henderson has had some really big seasons over the last couple of years. And you have Franklin. And Franklin's intriguing to me because Franklin last year had a really good season. I believe they went something along the lines of 21-4 possibly. But Franklin also had a JV team who I don't think dropped an entire set all year. I might be wrong. They definitely went undefeated, I believe. But I don't think they dropped a set at all last year in JV. So Franklin just completely went through a new cycle of players and has been super competitive, and they're about to start playing each other as well over the next week or so. I know Franklin West Henderson's coming up at the end of this week, I believe. West Henderson, who graduated a ton, Emma Bryson, who was like a Georgia middle blocker, MVP of the state championship, she's graduated and they've been fine. They lost some other players off that team as well. That league, I mean, Pisgah's entered this past week 6-2. Franklin was 6-1 entering this past week. West Henderson was 8-0. I know they did drop a match to Kings Mountain, but yeah, there's somebody in that league is going to go really, really far this postseason. Turning the page though to boys soccer, Porter Ridge is one of those teams that we started looking at, and you think they're a team that could do a lot. And then in Wake County, where it's always very strong in that 919, especially out in that southwestern part of the county, Middle Creek is starting to create some separation.
Yeah, these are two teams that are kind of similar versions of themselves in separate counties, Union County and Wake County, where Porter Ridge has had some competitive teams. I went down there and saw them a couple years back, but they're always playing behind a state championship contender at Marvin Ridge, state championship contender at Weddington, give or take whichever year. I mean, honestly, Marvin Ridge and Weddington, think about how many championships they've been to in the last decade. It's quite a lot between the two of them. And then, I mean, there's still good talent with Sun Valley and Cuthbertson, but Porter Ridge is kind of in the mix, but they lose some games against the other two. They beat some teams they're supposed to beat. And that's kind of, that's their season, winning about 2/3 of their games or so. Middle Creek in Wake County has always been kind of sandwiched between, again, if they step out of conference, they can beat those teams, but they in the past, we're not going to beat Green Hope, or not going to beat Holly Springs if they're running hot. Maybe
not consistently sweep them.
Yes, maybe
they'll grab one or two of the four, maybe.
Yeah, and Apex or Apex Friendship, they'll beat one of those two, maybe. But again, consistently kind of like middle of the pack in that conference, in that area of Wake County. This year, they're running hot, 7-0-1 to start the year. Porter Ridge is 9-0 themselves. And it's not like they haven't played anyone. Middle Creek has really tested themselves. When they beat Green Hope 4-0, again, it's not like Green Hope is a complete non-version of themselves. It's still Green Hope. They're still competitive. They're still good. They're still ranked by us. You have to kind of stop and take notice. Same thing with Porter Ridge. They beat East Lincoln, who I think is one of the best teams in the 5A. And they also beat Charlotte Country Day, which is one of the best independent schools in the state. So those immediate results, you start looking at it, and you're like, oh man, these are some teams. Again, both of these not ranked by us in the preseason, little bit off the radar. Maybe Middle Creek more so than Porter Ridge was. Like Porter Ridge. I actually Porter Ridge and Middle Creek. I was like, well, maybe because last year they had about similar records. I think Porter Ridge was 18-6, Middle Creek 17-7-1, and I was like, well, maybe something's going on this year. Actually, I checked that. I did rank Middle Creek at the beginning of the year, but it's still they're taking a huge leap from where they have been. And it's kind of cool to see, honestly, to see some new names in the mix.
If you're not already a high school OT insider, you're going to want to become one. Starting this week, you may have already seen there's a few football and volleyball ones out there, but playoff projections are starting to come out. They're going to be really interesting this year because the East-West lines and how with every result and every projection that comes out, the East-West line could flip. And as we discussed on the last episode of the Press Box, there's a handful of teams in the state, several dozen, that are on that line that can shift back and forth week to week. And when one team shifts, it completely changes the entire bracket. So this is not like the past where if you just keep on winning, you're going to kind of stick where you're at. This thing is going to be very fluid. So if you want to see weekly playoff projections and see where your team stands, where you're in the hunt to land seeding wise, especially with these new brackets, you're going to want to become a high school OT insider and sign up so you can get access to those projections. If you are not an insider already, you can sign up and you can use the promo code September and you can receive $15 off of an annual subscription to that. But again, this week, soccer, volleyball, football playoff projections, they're going to be in full swing. We do the bracketed sports for projections, and that's something you can follow along with on High School OT Insider. One more topic before we go here, J. Mike. There was the news and a statement from Commissioner Q. Tucker early last week about the number of ejections that happened in the month of August. Mind you, it was not a full month worth of games. It was about 3 weeks worth of games.
Right.
And there were 100 ejections across 2 sports, football and boys soccer.
Yep.
But that number is up 35% from where it was at a year ago. So the NCHSAA is making a concerted effort, obviously, to cut down on ejections. And when that news came out, it was met with a little bit of an interesting reaction from people who, rather than holding themselves accountable or maybe taking a look in the mirror, immediately used this headline as a way to bash, well, it's the officials' fault. I'm not 100% sure it's the officials' fault.
Well,
what's your take on all of this? Because I have a soapbox that I can get on, and we could probably go on for another hour just about that. But what's your initial take, though, when you kind of saw like what the reaction was to this story?
Well, it's like people, we're talking about ejections. We're not talking about like personal foul flags or yellow cards, straight up ejections for, in some cases, racial slurs, in some cases, profanity to the official.
Fighting.
And fighting. And you're like, well, if we had better refs, we wouldn't what? We wouldn't have fights.
If the refs were better, there would not. Yeah. What? That's stopping you from punching another kid, shoving another kid.
So if the ref gave you every single call and you never had to disagree with him, only then would you not call him a bleep bleep bleep. You know what I mean? Like, is that our bar now? That like, well, if he missed a call,
well, if you would have just been better, I wouldn't have had to do that. Yeah.
How am I supposed to control myself? Like it is
in a high school sporting event, nonetheless. This is not. I mean,
like there's a high bar for ejections, folks. Like we're not talking about a personal.
It's not easy to get ejected.
It's not. You really have to say something to somebody, like profanity within earshot. The racial slurs. I mean, like those are so easy. Like fighting, don't fight.
Mind you, those are the 2 main topics. That's the reason we're talking about this. When it came out and we got the list of like what the ejections were for. The main one was fighting, and then it was profanity / racial slurs. So again, I just really like the officiating is that bad that you have to go to that place to do that. And also it's this cycle. There's an officiating shortage.
Mhm.
It's pretty well known and well documented that there is one, and that the state of North Carolina across all sports needs more officials. There is a whole nother layer to the onion that we could unpeel just talking about. We need more officials in the state of North Carolina. What is one of the main reasons, J. Mike, that there is a shortage in officials?
Fan behavior.
Fan behavior and things that are being said by the participants in the athletic competition, whether that be athletes or coaches.
Yep.
So it's this cycle of we don't have enough officials in the state of North Carolina. If you don't have enough officials in the state of North Carolina, then you don't have the best officials, the best of the best, because you're scaring off the good ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
well,
you're treating these people with profanity and racial slurs, and they're having to deal with fighting. A lot of these officials are doing this for love of the game. They want to give back to their communities. They want to stick around the sports that they played growing up and the sports that they love. There is a great fraternity of high school sports officials that love this, and they love everything about high school sports, and they want to be involved in this. And you're not making it fun for them if you're a parent in the crowd berating them, or if you're a kid hitting them with a slick, curse word, or if you're a coach flipping out at any given moment of a game. So you wonder, like, why is there a lower quality of officials if that's what you believe? If you believe officials have gotten worse, why? There is a shortage. Why is there a shortage? It's because how people treat these officials nowadays. And you say, like, oh, well, I get a pass for cursing at the official because he wasn't doing his job well. We're talking high school sports.
Yeah.
We love covering high school sports. We are very passionate about the impact of high school sports, but in no way is it big enough or important enough or grounds for some of the reactions that we're seeing. I was covering a football game, not this past week, but the week prior on Thursday. It was the final 2 minutes of a game. The game was all but decided. I saw a kid get ejected for throwing a punch on the winning team. He was 2 minutes away from winning the game. Just for fun, he got tangled up with a kid, swung on the kid, and got thrown out of the game. And I looked over at the sideline. His coaches were just like, you got to be kidding me. That's 2 games. Like, you got tossed for 2 games. We don't have you for 2 games. This is a contending team who's good. We don't have you for 2 games because for some reason in the final 2 minutes of a game that we were going to win, you decided to do what kids now say is crash out.
Yeah.
Really? Like, that's what we're doing? Is that cool?
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the Shelby thing. You get 10. You are promised 10 high school football games a season. The most you can now play is 8 because you did something that dumb. But then you turn around and you wonder, like, what was the ref going to do?
Yeah.
Grab your fist before it landed on the kid?
Yeah, right.
Unbelievable.
I got 3 things. One, let's tie this back into what we talked about earlier. What is your code? Coaches need to have a code for themselves and for their players. Like, if you disagree with every call at the same, like, ferocity, and you were just like flipping out, or are you flipping out only when you're trailing in the game and you're going to be a lot more calm if you're winning the game? That's not a good code. You have to, in your mind, and I've only coached youth basketball, and there's times when I just want to be like, really, because you're talking about high school officiating is really good compared to what you get at the rec level. Okay,
I've heard after some Saturdays, man. We've talked.
Yes, at the rec level. But I'm just sitting over there like, I have to deal with that. Like, he's a nice guy. Like, he's out here reffing 10U basketball on a Saturday. He's got 3 more games after this. I've got to deal with that. And my kids starting to get upset. I'm like, no, stop. Like, that's not what we're going to do. If he misapplies a rule, then I'm like, hey, that's not the rule. We had a whole meeting before the year that this was the rule. And like, that's where the one time I've had like a strong disagreement. Everything else, I'm just like, oh, come on, like complete, like, what about, like, that's not really, are you really going to call that? Those little things, but I'm not losing my mind over there. And I've seen some coaches that do at that age. But again, you got to have a code and apply that and make sure your kids have that code. So the kid code can easily just be, don't worry about it next play. Like, let me handle everything, and reinforcing that, let me handle it, because they don't understand 2 games feels like a lot, especially their seniors. The second thing is I think a lot of coaches or a lot of people, players and parents and everything, don't have the advantage that we have, that we go to games that we are not invested in some cases at all. Like, we have no ties. Sometimes I'm going to a game in a place of the state that the only time I've ever been here in this county is to cover a high school game. I don't have any family. I don't have any acquaintances. I don't have any high school ties or friends who went here. So why am I there?
Both teams have fun.
Yeah, just hope both teams have fun. Just hope for a good game that's worth the drive.
Yeah.
And because of that, I sit back there dispassionately. I can say like, oh, that's a good call. Oh, I don't know about that one. And like, not get too carried away by it.
Yep.
Which is an advantage, because I know the parents, like, they're invested into this. And maybe the idea of what I'm trying to get to is maybe they should go to a game just whenever they can that they don't care about, and listen to the other parents and realize that's you. That's what you sound like.
I've always said,
yeah, go ahead.
The greatest column that can ever be written, and we'll have to do this one day, is you need to send somebody to like a high school football or high school basketball or a soccer game or something like that with a recorder, not there to cover the game, but to sit in the stands and just write down everything that they hear from the stands, and then put it all into one column or one document. If you were to read the things that you hear on the most obscure Tuesday night game that has no implication to anything, you would be appalled.
Yeah.
And I think some of these fans and some of these parents may need to take a look in the mirror.
I think there's a little bit of like, oh, I'm not crazy.
I wouldn't do that.
I don't do that. So back in, I think it was 2011. I know, wow, it's 14 years ago, but I had a sportsmanship column for the Cary News. I had a dad walk up to me. Was like, hey, read your column, like, really good job. Like, that, we really need a lot of that. You had like the perfect tone and everything. I was like, oh, wow, thank you so much. 3 innings later, that dad is flipping out, going at the student section who brought their fans for this playoff game. He's like, yeah, what about that? I'm just like, he doesn't. I was like, I've done nothing. I thought I accomplished something with this column, but no, because no one thinks they're the problem. So it just falls. No one thinks I'm talking about them. I think I'm talking about everybody else. So again, and that's part of the, like, having a code. Parents, don't talk to the other student section. Like, go, if you have a problem.
At least we win with class. That's my favorite line. Sorry.
If the student section said something other, like, not like scoreboard, okay, or I believe we will win. If they like got dirty and they started insults, you contact an administrator to put it into that. You don't
take it into your own hands.
Yeah. That's part of like the code we kind of live by. But also, when you don't care about who wins, or you go to a game where it doesn't really matter to you who wins, and you kind of sit away from the people who are overly caring, you start to see things with different eyes, and you're like, well, that's not a bad call. Like, these people are crazy. And then you realize, like, okay, maybe I should do something different. The third thing is, I've thought about this, from working at a school. How many games does a kid go through which he never hears his name or her name from the stands? Instead, mom and dad have decided that all of their energy is going to be to talk about the ref and go to the ref. And at the end of the game, I can't tell you how many times it's happened. In the game, I'm like, I have no idea whose kid they have on the team, because they're never saying, let's go, Mike. Let's go, Evan. Come on, Evan. Come on, Mike. Let's get it. Like, they never mention their kid. Their kid is a sidelight, is a sideshow to the main event, which is, I'm going to get on this ref. I'm going to make his life hell tonight. that's the thing. You got to be introspective as a parent. You only get so many home games and so many road games that you get to finish out the high school career and be in the stands. Are you going to spend all of it talking about these random strangers, or are you going to also maybe learn some other kids' names on the team and talk about them and cheer them on? Because they go entire games, they never hear anyone say "Let's go, Mark," "Let's go, Jared." I don't know. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So that's my last thing is.
Yeah,
You
bring up a really good point there, because last spring, I was at a softball game, and a mother just took it upon herself to just berate the umpire, and she just made it her goal. I'm gonna tell this guy what's on my mind. She was just going in on this umpire to the point where her daughter stepped out of the dugout, looked at her, and said, "Mom," called her mom by her first, said, "Stop it, Mom. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing my team. Stop. Don't do this." And it was a reality check for the parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting right there between it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that poor kid had to sit there hands on ears because the mom made it about her and her personal feelings about the quality of the official, and not realizing it had this trickle-down effect to, not only was it affecting her own daughter, it was these are high school kids. They don't want to be embarrassed. Everybody knows that's her mom.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Don't
do that.
They don't, people feed off positive energy, but if you spend all your time in the stands, making negative energy about the umpire or the ref, then you're missing out on a chance to actually help the home team a little bit. And I've seen that it's one thing for student sections. Student sections kind of wait, how do we cheer for our own team? I only know how to make fun of the other team. I don't know how to cheer on my team. But parents should know that. All you have to do is just your kid's name or his friend's name, her friend's name that's on the team. And sometimes we miss out on those opportunities. But if you have that mindset going in of hey, things are going to happen. I've been to other games. I've seen other people, I've seen people freak out over calls that weren't that bad. I'm not going to do that. And you have the mindset of, I'm going here to cheer for my team and not make it all about the referee. I might be mad at the end of the night. I'm not saying you're never going to feel mad at the end of the night that there was a bad call at a pivotal point of the game. That's going to happen. That's part of sports. But if you have that mentality going in, then you know what you at least don't do, Evan? You don't see 100 ejections in 3 weeks and think, what are those refs doing wrong?
Yep.
What did those refs do to make those people so mad? No, it's you start to see things with a lot more clear eyes. And I would say society gets a little bit better when we all come to that realization.
Well, let's hope that by the end of September, there's a decrease in that number. We'll continue tracking that throughout the school year on High School OT, and make good decisions when you're at games, whether you're on the field as an athlete, on the sideline as a coach, or in the stands as a parent. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the High School OT Press Box. Tons of coverage throughout the week on highschoolot.com. Monday will feature statewide and area code rankings for volleyball, soccer, and football. Again, High School OT Insiders, you can get playoff projections for all three sports throughout this week. If you're not an insider, you can save $15 on your annual subscription when you use the promo code September. That's an entire year worth of analysis, in-depth playoff projections, all of that you get with High School OT Insider. And then obviously we will have daily coverage of high school sports around the state of North Carolina. For J. Mike Blake, I'm Evan Moesta. Enjoy the 5th week of the fall sports season. This has been an episode of the High School OT Press Box.